So welcome to our presentation on the Ephesoft effect and advanced capture opportunities. I'm Bill Johnson, Regional Sales Manager for Ephesoft, the best technology in advanced capture and OCR capability in the industry. Thanks for joining. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution of the ECM market and the issues and constraints facing major businesses today. We'll talk more about what Ephesoft does and what it means rather than how it does it. Then we'll talk about what that means in terms of overall business process improvement, enhancing corporate strategy, and achieving enterprise goals effectively and efficiently. And most importantly, how we can have the advanced capture solution not only pay for itself, but produce sufficient savings to be able to address other corporate needs at the same time. Perhaps an ECM platform consolidation project to include records management and migration, or maybe an analytics effort. Finally, we'll discuss what the real market for advanced capture is. So let's get started. What issues are mature and major businesses faced with today? The ECM technology has evolved over the last 30 years, and corporations have had to evolve with it. Unfortunately, that evolution was largely add-on or siloed deployments in the beginning of the latest hot-ticket capability. Little thought was given back then to the ultimate management of corporate data and intellectual property at the macro level. Departmental deployments of early adoptions, vertically specific products and platforms, inheriting complexity due to merger and acquisition, IT's transition from centralized to distributed architecture, and, with the advent of the browser, back again. IT was often not able to keep up with demand, so business units went out on their own to solve their problems. We've all seen it. The legacy is tough to deal with. Think of how many physical and electronic storage areas you have in your enterprise. How many copies of the same artifact, and if you're lucky, they're all named the same, both in the form of metadata labels and in the database. But we all know that's not often the case. It's not uncommon for companies to have several ECM and line of business repositories. Did you know that according to AIM, over 75% of businesses have multiple ECM platforms, often in excess of 10, with all the complication and management issues that entails? How many SharePoints in a drawer do you have? It's very expensive to level set corporate intellectual property from a governance standpoint. Not to mention doing so does nothing for operational efficiency. And the real problem is the effort is pure cost and provides only risk mitigation. It does nothing to proactively advance the bottom line of the company. Along that same line is the technology lag. Many of today's capture systems were developed in the early 90s and have had to live with their genetic markers and DNA, so to speak. Most were born out of two-tier client-server architectures. Capture products themselves grew in capability through merger and acquisition, which means the code base got cumbersome. Maintenance and upgrades got more complex and harder to maintain. Ephesoft was born in 2010 after our founders, seasoned experts from the document capture world, realized the technology had become stale, was suffering under its own weight, and was not keeping up with the latest architectural standards, development techniques, and transmission capabilities. What emerged is an incredibly capable and flexible advanced capture platform for all document types and formats specializing in unstructured forms. Simplified pricing, open integration capability, unlimited extensibility and scalability, and a patented methodology for content, context-based classification and extraction puts Ephesoft at the head of the pack for capability and capacity, providing the lowest total cost of ownership for advanced capture processes. So, when taking paper and converting to digital form and dealing with born digital documents, it's important to differentiate between scanning and capture. Scanning is just a means to take a picture of a document and save the image. There is really no intelligence in the process, and the file is usually manually named and saved in a folder. Scanning applications have been commoditized by the industry, and many come free with scanning hardware from most vendors. Advanced capture applications focus on automation and efficiency and can automatically identify the type of document, convert the image to text, and extract information. Intelligent capture goes a step further and learns as things are processed, further reducing user intervention. Advanced capture also addresses many file types, not just scanned images. We can process electronic files, Word, Excel, email, faxes, born digital documents, PDFs, and so on. Keying from a PDF on screen may technically mean you're paperless, but you are by no means optimized. Capture can also output a searchable file that provides full text search capability through OCR. As shown in the diagram, you can represent the Capture workflow model in the form of an hourglass, with customers and vendors feeding us documents and transactions via standard methods into batch capture processes feeding workflow. Commensurate with the typical scan, index, release process model, error correction and exception processing at the document or transaction level is typically handled in workflow. We define batch capture as the use of batch cover sheets, barcoded separator sheets, and key from image indexing. A miskeyed index, mismatched document set, or poorly prepped batch results in extraneous work efforts in order to perfect the document or transaction to the point it can be processed in workflow. Industry standards put that error correction requirement at 15 to 20 times the level of effort to process a normal transaction. Batch capture error rates due to normal operational conditions range in the area of 7 to 10% of total transactions or documents. Even the best data entry operator makes mistakes. Statistics indicate that at a minimum, 1 in 67 characters will be keyed incorrectly. Even if that's 1 in 100, what is the resulting effect on us? It means that 1 in 8 Social Security numbers will be entered incorrectly. 1 in 10 invoices will be keyed in error, and that means extra effort. Are you familiar with the 1-10-100 rule? It's new and going around. The 1-10-100 rule can be applied in many scenarios concerned with production and cost of correction. It's expressed in dollars in this example, but it can be understood to mean any number of units measured in financial terms or level of effort. The postulate is, if it takes 1 unit of work to facilitate a transaction or prevent an error, it will take 10 units to correct it mid-process. If the item makes it all the way through the process and fails, it'll take 100 times the level of effort to correct it. We can also use 1-10-100 to measure cost in terms of resources or time. For our purposes, the 1-10-100 rule can be applied to data quality challenges at various stages of the document management or workflow process. We'll use this to help us quantify the cost of errors. Facilitating successful IT projects in today's world is all about resource optimization and force multiplication. Simply stated, we must get better bang for the buck. 75 to 90% of all scanning applications are batch-oriented. Again, we define batch capture as the use of batch cover sheets, barcoded separator sheets, and key from image indexing practices. This can be optimized and significant savings recovered, but as the existing process is running smoothly and without issue, those savings potentials go largely unnoticed, as we are typically reactive or crisis-oriented with respect to daily management. It's the quintessential forest and trees scenario. This means that literally any batch capture operation has significant opportunity for improvement. Our premise at Ephesoft is leverage existing pathways and tribal knowledge. Use your existing procedures. Don't compete with the status quo. Make it work better for you. Increase capability from existing hardware platforms and digital plumbing. Multifunction devices can be so much more than a simple document on-ramp. They can literally be turned into advanced capture facilitation platforms, de-skilling the process, increasing throughput, and maximizing existing investment. And the same Ephesoft advanced capture platform used for daily transactional business processes can be used to facilitate legacy migration, metadata correction, data normalization, and records management assignments. By inserting Ephesoft between current capture processes and workflow, you reduce cost and complexity in capture, collapse the document acquisition to submission cycle, increase velocity and accuracy, and provide more points of acquisition. You can reduce errors due to batch capture, and as importantly, you can do this with very little change to the existing business processes. No help desk scripts or process change for the customer or vendor or your internal workflow people. No retraining on either side of the process, merely a reduction of cost and complexity in the capture area. You can literally do this behind the curtain, so to speak. No major project teams, drawn-out discovery, or drama. The Ephesoft effect. Ephesoft Advanced Capture improves workflow performance with no investment, change, or cost to the workflow process. Now, I'll say that again. Ephesoft Advanced Capture can improve workflow performance with absolutely no investment, change, or cost to the workflow process. Now, I'm hoping there's some healthy skepticism out there on this one. By compressing the document acquisition to submission cycle, increasing velocity and throughput, we reduce direct labor requirements and human touches in the capture process, and as a result, we reduce errors submitted to workflow. This means we will create direct labor savings in areas we affect and are typically the bigger piece of the pie. Why is that important? We create increased cash flow. Another way to think about that is the project is self-funding. So how do we do that? In front of every business process or workstream workflow, the very first branch in the logic model is, can the item be worked? Is the artifact or transaction complete and correct? Yes, no. If yes, it goes straight into workflow and gets processed. If not, it goes into what I call the 12-step program. Is it a document error? Did I get an AP document in HR, vice versa? Is it a data error? Values don't match or aren't present. Industry standards state that it can take 10 to 15 times the level of effort to correct a defective item as it does to process one straight through. The 110-100 rule takes it even further. Let's look at the consequence of errors mathematically. Hey, Morpheus. Oftentimes, obvious things are hidden in the mist of normal and go unnoticed. A 5% error rate is typically within operationally accepted norms, and the dashboard will be green. No alarms are sounding, thus no scrutiny is given. But what does a 5% error rate mean in terms of cost and potential opportunity? Let's look at that. I've got a model here using one of my former customers as the straw man, and they have 30,000 pages coming in per day. And there's about 3 pages per transaction, producing 10,000 work items for workflow. Now, we're processing this with a classic batch capture operation. 4 people opening 20,000 envelopes, 6 people sorting it into 8 different regions, doing the tape and staples, 8 people doing batch creation, single page, multi-page, conditional, separator sheets, 5 scanners, and 10 people keying from image, and we were doing zonal OCR and database lookups here, and 2 people moving it around the environment. We got 35 people in the enterprise capture room. They were very, very happy with this because they used to have 82 people processing paper, bundling these things up into paper batches with data entry requirements for the mainframe. That environment now fed the 100 data entry clerks in another location. They produced those 10,000 items per day. And using $15 an hour as a standard FTE cost, we can come to a cost per transaction in workflow of $1.20. The measured error rate in this particular environment was 5% due to normal batch capture errors, miskeyed indexes, wrong batch cover sheet, things like that. To facilitate this volume in an Ephesoft environment, it would take 30,000 pages a day, one of our 8 core systems. That'd be about $175,000 in software, $35,000 in annual maintenance, and we're estimating about 300 hours of professional services to deploy the application for a total system and solution cost of $277,500. Now I'm going to carry this profile over to my ROI calculator. Here I have the same environment, and I'm going to apply industry-accepted conservative reductions due to advanced capture. I still have the same 20,000 envelopes to open. However, now I no longer have to sort into regions. All I have to do is tape and staples. I don't have to do batch cover sheets or document separator sheets either, and because those are not being scanned, I pick up 1 scanner's worth of efficiency. Instead of 10 people keying from image, I now have 3 people dealing with OCR exceptions and business logic exceptions. Same 2 people moving the volume around the room, but we go from 35 people to 19 in the capture room. We go from $1 million in direct labor to $560,000 in direct labor. Our cost per transaction in capture is 42, down to 22. That means we save $490,000 in labor, not counting paper, print, ink, destruction, all of the other ancillary things. And we achieve about $40,000 a month in direct labor savings. Against a $277,000 system cost, our flat ROI and payback is 177% in 7 months. Excellent numbers. Any salesperson, any process person, and any CFO would be happy with. But here's my sham wow comment. But wait, there's more. We talked about workflow performance as it relates to advanced capture in the Ephesoft effect. I carry over my workflow environment of 100 people producing 100 items, 10,000. There's my $1.20. When we consider that 5% of our transactions are in error, that means 500 have to be dealt with. At 10 times the level of effort, conservative estimate, it means that it's going to cost us $12 per item, or $1.5 million for these error corrections. More important, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to understand that we are literally using 50% of our direct labor to process 5% of our volume. I'll let that sink in a little bit. If I have 500 errors and it takes 10 times the level of effort, it means I could have created or processed 5,000 normal transactions. Now think about that. 50% of my labor to deal with 5% of my volume. So if through the magic of Ephesoft and advanced capture, I cut those errors in half, what happens? Well, I get an empirical reduction of errors, so I reduce my cost for error correction from $1.5 million to $750. But more importantly, I get to add the value of those 250 items saved at 10x the effort and add them back to workflow. That means now my same 100 people can now process 12,500 items in a day. And my cost per transaction goes from $1.20 to 96 cents, and I increase my overall throughput by 20%. And we never touched the workflow application. That's the Ephesoft effect. But another sham wow, but wait, there's more. So let's look at the total economic effect of our $277,000. We get $490,000 from the capture room. We get $750,000 from reduced errors. Then we get to reallocate $600,000 in direct labor savings, or we can take on 20% more market without increasing infrastructure at all. My overall contribution now, due to advanced capture and the Ephesoft effect, is $1.8 million. So let's talk about the Ephesoft effect as a catalyst for performance. And let's think in terms of capital performance and the cost of delay. A $280,000 solution returns $40,000 a month in savings. If I take and add 4 more years of maintenance and run this out to a 5-year cost to ownership, it's about $500,000. And if I lease that at 18% money, I'm going to have a monthly payment of $10,000. When you do all the subtraction and math, it means you're going to save over $28,000 a month in positive cash flow. That's a 250% return on investment based on the cost of capital on a monthly basis or capital performance. It also means that every month I don't do this, I'm losing $28,000 or the cost of delay. We talked about how inserting Ephesoft between current capture processes and workflow would affect workflow process efficiency and reduce costs without touching those applications. What if we moved all document transaction perfection into the capture domain and only submitted workable items to workflow? Let's look at that again. I can easily go up here and say, I'm going to reduce this to 0. That means I'm now going to be able to have 14,000, almost 15,000 items through my same 100 people. My cost per transaction goes down to 80 cents, and my overall efficiency in workflow goes to 33%. And my total contribution is 2.9, almost $3 million. Again, you can literally do this behind the curtain. There's no major project teams or drawn-out discovery or drama. What is the benefit of a 20 to 30% improvement across your entire administrative workforce? Let's take a look at that in a different modeler. Here's my 130 people and 15 bucks an hour. There's my $500,000 5-year cost, leased at my payment. And because I get to amortize this over 5 years, my ROI is 187% and a 7-month payback. Again, extremely good performance. Another consideration, the error resolution process is much like changing a tire. Doesn't matter what kind of car, truck, or bus you drive, it's the same process. The same is largely true for error correction. And as Ephesoft is a pure thin environment, it means that the reduction of overall errors to process, it takes fewer people in each department, which is hard to keep them current on the process. This lends itself to the notion of centralizing error correction or even outsourcing error correction to managed service organizations. Let's talk about legacy migration, platform consolidation, and records management efforts, something many of us are faced with. Now the hourglass has legacy ECM applications and paper repositories being fed into a consolidated single ECM platform with records management. For your various electronic repositories, export the text and TIFF to a file location. Run the images through Ephesoft and extract the metadata from the image. You can then compare and correct the legacy metadata, extract additional fields you want, if you want, and export the documents to your enterprise content management platform. You can add a document class and retention attribute as part of the process, allowing you to instantly determine which records are available for disposition. You can run your paper documents through Ephesoft as well, also assigning the document class and retention attribute. This allows you to scrutinize all corporate intellectual property and records through a documented process, account for everything, and begin the destruction cycle facilitated by a well-documented, rules-based process. Let's look and see what that means. I'm going to go back to my cost justification. I'm going to go ahead and plug in $1.2 million to consolidate all my ECM platforms into some new, Alfresco, Documentum, OnBase, whichever one, and I'm going to add $300,000 to administer the records management part of it. I've now got a $2 million project. If I finance that for 5 years, it's a $42,000 monthly payment. At only 20% increase across the platform for all my people involved, you can see that a $42,000 payment will get me $78,000 in retained earnings or direct labor savings. It's $36,000 a month. That's 185% capital performance based on the cost of money on a monthly basis. Now, using Ephesoft's rapid application deployment capability, we're going to take a month to build it, and we're going to start deploying, and you can see that we're ramping our efficiency requirements, and we're getting better every month, and at month 5, we're now at full tilt. Let's look at this in terms of financial or retained earnings perspective. Here's my monthly lease cost in red. Here's my recovered direct labor savings, accounting for ramp up, and the green line represents retained earnings. As you can see, between month 5 and 6, we go into positive cash flow based on the cost of capital on a monthly basis. And in fact, this $2 million project will achieve $237,000 in retained earnings, literally paying for itself and providing additional funds for other things within the enterprise. We've just taken the savings generated from an Ephesoft advanced capture solution and provided a funding mechanism for otherwise hard to justify IT projects. How old are your servers and supporting applications? What other things have you got in the house that you'd like to improve and deal with while you have something that produces this kind of performance? I hope this has been helpful, hopefully enlightening. And as information, I've been in the ECM business for over 25 years. And I don't just talk about this, I did it. I had my own company providing ECM solutions since 1991. Before I sold the company in 2008, we designed, deployed, and maintained many hundreds of capture, workflow, and integrated business solutions. And this thought process and methodology was at the core of it all. If you'd like to get more details on Ephesoft or get a demo, contact us at info@ephesoft.com, and we'll get back to you with the appropriate resource and regional contact. We have an extensive online presence with our Ephesoft University channel on YouTube and Wiki, where you can see many product videos, case studies, and industry applications. And of course, you are welcome to visit ephesoft.com as well. Thank you all for your time. Hope you have a great rest of your day. We're at our timetable, but we're happy to keep the session open if anybody has any questions, or you can simply send your questions to info@ephesoft.com.